Is sexual and reproductive health a woman's issue? It really isn't, because when it comes to one's own reproductive system, family planning, safe sex, sexually transmitted diseases, cancer, and what constitutes abuse, both genders are impacted, not to mention the toll taken on the economy and society as a whole. Culturally, there's discomfort in talking about these things, but with 7.52 million people at the risk of developing cervical cancer in Sri Lanka, the second most common cancer impacting women in Sri Lanka after breast cancer, almost 50% of Sri Lankan men saying they had committed rape in a 2013 UN multi-country survey, increases in teen pregnancies, rape, abuse, criminal abortions, incidences of STDs, and advanced stages of carcinoma. This is not just a woman's problem. These are all issues that impact everyone, entire communities, the social fabric, and eventually the nation's economy, productivity, and development. We all pay a price. So I spoke with two young women from ARCA, an organization working towards the realization of greater sexual and reproductive well-being in Sri Lanka, led by a group of young doctors, psychologists, lawyers, and researchers. Manisha Dissanayake is an attorney at law practicing in the Supreme Court. She focuses on human rights law and has been an invited speaker at numerous forums, including at Harvard. ARCA is her brainchild. Dr. Radhika Sundararaj, the mentor for ARCA, has been very involved in dealing with medical conditions stemming from reproductive and sexual health and doing research in this area with the Tianjin General Hospital, China. So given that males are generally excluded from this conversation, I asked Manisha whether it actually is a woman's issue.
It's not, and this is actually one of the more dangerous misconceptions surrounding sexual and reproductive health. I'll give you very simple examples. So men are also at risk of getting breast cancer, and when men are usually diagnosed with breast cancer, statistically the chances of that cancer being fatal are far higher than when it comes to women. So the problem with sexual and reproductive health is that it is perceived as a women's only issue, and there are significant problems when you don't engage men and when you don't bring men to the table, and when men are not actively engaging in these issues which they have a vested interest in. So for instance, even things like family planning, for instance, you need your partner to be part of that conversation if you are to have effective family planning, because these are things that affect all parties in relationships, all parties in sexual relationships. So it's actually incredibly dangerous to sort of portray SRH as a women's only issue.
So where do we find solutions if that's the case?
I think institutions and people who are working in the grassroots have to think of very nuanced, gender inclusive mechanisms and ways by which you can engage men, because I think there are so many issues in bringing men to the table. The first is that men may be emasculated because, again, like I said, these issues are perceived as women only issues, and the other thing is men are deliberately excluded from these conversations, and that's due to the various barriers and the impediments that certain socio-cultural things, present. So I think we have to rethink our approach to sexual and reproductive health. Even hospitals, NGOs, people who are working, like I said, in the grassroots, have to think about how we make these conversations more inclusive in terms of gender.
So what do you think are the cultural barriers in facing up to these issues and actually finding solutions to them?
So the biggest thing is due to a lack of awareness. We found that these cultural barriers will be part of facilitating the problem and also a hindrance to the solution of the problem. So for example, in schools where we see already existing curriculums in health science, on reproductive anatomy and how fertilization occurs. All of this is a part of our curriculum, and yet there's a discomfort to discuss it with teachers, parents, overall reluctance to step forward and talk about these issues. And this creates a huge problem because we cannot properly identify what the problems are and who's being affected by these things. So even things like abuse and rape, if we isolate it and say it's a woman's problem and this is the demographic that's involved, you completely ignore a vulnerable demographic, men that are susceptible to abuse and rape. And also just this belief that abuse is a physical thing and that it can't be verbal. All of these are cultural barriers. Another thing that we've identified is with menstruating women. One of the projects that we tried to bring in was a sustainable sanitation project, where we had to really rethink the menstrual cup. We found that a lot of menstruating women could not afford normal sanitary napkins, and so yet they were reluctant to use products like the menstruation cup because there was this fear that the hymen will be torn in the process. So in order to really find proper solutions to this problem, we have to break these cultural barriers as well in the process.
So Radhika mentioned that this should be an inclusive process, a gender inclusive process. So if we are to get males and females and even the LGBT community into this conversation, how are we going to do that?
Yeah, I think with normalizing these conversations, I think these are things that have to start at the grassroots, because these aren't changes that can be wrought by way of government policy or a law, for instance, because you have to sensitize people to these things, and you have to normalize these conversations. And in order to engender these meaningful and tangible and real conversations, I think you have to start at the grassroots, particularly because these are culturally charged issues. These are issues that people are reluctant to discuss because they feel shame, because they labor under various assumptions that are wrong, and because they are crippled by the cultural, social, and sometimes even economic limitations that are placed upon us, especially when we talk about issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health. So in order to make these issues and these conversations more inclusive, I think even various institutions like hospitals and wherever there is a point of service with regards to sexual and reproductive health, I think we need to start creating more comfortable environments, safer spaces, even for people to access services like getting tested for STDs. I think in order to find sustainable solutions, I think it's important that holistic measures are adopted, and you need to have all parties take an active role. So for instance, you need to have activists at the ground level, really sensitizing people, really getting them out of, certain socio-cultural shackles that they are bound by. Then you also need to have policymakers who will draft these policies based on actual needs at the grassroots and communicating that effectively. Then you also need to have political will. A lot of the time, a lot of great initiatives fail because there is no political will to push these things forward. So I think if we are to realize meaningful solutions, especially to some things as controversial as sexual and reproductive health, I think all stakeholders need to act together, because again, it's no point creating solutions from the top if people don't access those services. So for instance, at MOH clinics, there are services available for any woman over the age of 35 for if she wants to get tested, to do a check for, like to do pap smears, for instance. But very rarely do women actually access and avail themselves of these benefits and these services, because they don't know that they exist, and maybe because of the stigma that prevents them from actually accessing these things. So it has to be everyone acting in sync and acting in concert to realize these solutions.
Well, remember, Manisha said that males do get breast cancer. Well, global statistics are that 1 in 1,000 men do get breast cancer, but the risk factors for men are fatal and much higher. We do need that inclusive conversation. Women alone can't fight this battle. Men do matter in sex, health and baby matters. Thank you Manisha Dissanayake and Dr. Radhika Sundararaj for joining us on Selingco Live. Let's talk.
If you'd like to watch the full programs of Kaleidoscope, log on to our YouTube channel, Kaleidoscope with Savitri Rodrigo.
With Selingco Life Pension Saver, Sri Lanka's premier retirement plan, start planning for your retirement today. Selingco Life, a relationship for life.